For $280, an older man named Arthur bought a damaged steel arch and refused to freeze the archive. Before this, he spent 14 brutal months sleeping in the front seat of a rusted pickup truck. The local shelters had open beds, but they demanded he abandon his dog to use one. So he chose the bitter cold. Instead, if you look at Watermarked, you can see him standing in heavy winter workwear. Outside his snow-covered corrugated metal Quonset hut, the temperature that morning was minus 14 degrees. What defies belief is how he stayed warm. Across the northern United States, hypothermia death rates among the unsheltered population have climbed by nearly 35% over the last decade. In cities from Minneapolis to Buffalo, winter is not just a season. It is a mass casualty event that happens in slow motion. According to regional hospital data, men over the age of 55 now account for roughly 18% of all severe winter exposure and frostbite admissions, despite representing a tiny fraction of the total population. These are older men, often with compromised health, living entirely exposed to sub-zero wind chills. Every major city has a system designed to prevent this. When the weather forecast drops below 15 degrees, municipalities activate emergency protocols. They call them Code Blue or cold weather alerts. Temporary warming centers open inside community gymnasiums and converted warehouses. Millions of dollars are triggered in emergency funding, but the people most at risk of dying are often the exact people who refuse to enter these buildings. That sounds like a reckless personal choice, but the reality on the ground is entirely different. Congregate shelters can be dangerous. Men who have been robbed or assaulted while sleeping on a crowded gymnasium floor would rather take their chances with the ice than share a room with 100 unpredictable strangers. Others struggle with severe mental strain that makes the chaos of a packed warehouse genuinely terrifying. And a significant number of these men have a dog that has been their only companion for years. City shelters strictly forbid pets. It is not a rejection of warmth. It is a rejection of impossible conditions attached to it. Cities spend hundreds of millions of dollars annually on these emergency networks. Yet, this is the same system that routinely locks its shelter doors at 6 o'clock in the morning, forcing older men right back out onto the frozen pavement during the coldest hours of the day. The budgets expand, the task forces multiply, and the body count continues to climb. That massive gap between a billion-dollar municipal strategy and a man freezing on the sidewalk is where conventional approach completely falls apart. And to understand exactly how a person falls into that deadly gap, you have to look at the granular, terrifying math that forced Arthur out of the traditional housing market in the first place. $385. That is what Arthur brought home every Friday after taxes, working the swing shift as a maintenance mechanic at a logistics facility just outside of Missoula, Montana, repairing conveyor belts in an unheated warehouse. For years, that was enough. But in the fall of 2022, the average rent for a basic one-bedroom apartment in his county surged to $1,400 a month. Do the math. 4 weeks of pay comes to exactly $1,540. After handing over a rent check, Arthur was left with $140 for the entire month. That money had to cover food, gas, truck insurance, and the prescription arthritis medication he desperately needed just to keep turning wrenches. The margin for error is zero. The math does not work. It has never worked. And when a sudden dental emergency drained his meager savings in November, the math stopped pretending to work entirely. He was evicted 3 weeks before Christmas. That is when Arthur and his mixed-breed dog moved permanently into the front seat of a 2004 Ford F-150. Sleeping in a vehicle during a Montana winter is not a temporary inconvenience. It is a slow, freezing war of attrition. The glass windows offer zero thermal resistance. Moisture from breathing condensates on the inside of the windshield and turns into a solid sheet of ice by midnight. Arthur slept sitting straight up, wrapped in 2 heavy sleeping bags, keeping one bare hand near the ignition keys. When the interior temperature dropped below a survivable threshold, he would turn the key and idle the engine to run the heater for 30 minutes at a time. But running an older V8 truck engine for ambient heat consumes roughly half a gallon of gas every hour. At $3.50 a gallon, keeping himself and his dog alive through a 14-hour winter night was costing him nearly $15 a day just in fuel. that is over $100 a week, burned directly from his dwindling paychecks, simply to stop his blood from freezing in his veins. The truck was bankrupting him faster than the apartment had. And worse, the constant fear of carbon monoxide poisoning meant he never actually slept. He just drifted in and out of a cold, shivering panic. Arthur realized very quickly that the Ford was not a shelter. It was a slow, incredibly expensive metal coffin. He needed a radical alternative before the cold finally killed him. 40 miles outside of town, a military and agricultural surplus yard sat covered in frost. Buried in the back lot, beneath a heavy canvas tarp, lay a disassembled 10 by 10-foot Quonset hut. The corrugated steel panels were severely dented along the base flanges. They were streaked with surface rust. A commercial buyer would never touch them. But Arthur did not need a commercial building. He needed to survive. He bought the entire pile of damaged steel for exactly $280 in cash. But a steel shell requires a piece of ground. Arthur did not have the credit or the capital for a formal lease. Instead, he drove out to the county roads and looked for overgrown properties. He found an aging rancher with a collapsing barn and 50 acres of unmaintained brush. Arthur offered a simple trade. He would clear the fence lines, chop winter firewood, and keep an eye on the livestock. In exchange, the rancher would let him place a 100-square-foot structure behind a dense tree line, completely out of sight from the main road. The rancher agreed. No paperwork, no background checks, just a handshake between two men who understood the value of hard labor. Getting hundreds of pounds of steel to that tree line was the next logistical nightmare. A professional hauling service would have charged $300 minimum. Arthur solved this by asking a former co-worker at the warehouse to borrow a flatbed trailer on a Sunday morning. He paid the man $30 in gas money and spent 4 hours helping him replace a truck alternator in return. Assembly began in the biting wind. The Quonset design is brutally simple, engineered for rapid military deployment. But it is not meant to be built by one older man working alone in the snow. Each curved steel rib weighed roughly 45 pounds. Arthur worked with a borrowed half-inch socket wrench and a cordless impact driver, his breath freezing on the metal as he hoisted the heavy arches into place. He dropped bolts into the snow. His knuckles cracked and bled against the frozen steel. It took him 2 full weekends of backbreaking labor, pulling ratchet straps and driving self-tapping screws, until the final arch was bolted tight and the wooden end walls were secured. The structure was finally standing, but as the wind howled against the corrugated metal, Arthur confronted a terrifying physical reality. Uninsulated steel in a Montana winter is not a shelter. It is a walk-in freezer. Steel conducts cold with brutal efficiency. Without insulation, an enclosed metal arch in the snow operates exactly like a winter refrigerator. Warm, moist air from a man breathing inside hits the freezing steel walls and instantly turns into condensation. It rains inside the structure. Within weeks, the moisture freezes, thaws, and destroys everything, breeding mold and soaking sleeping bags. If Arthur did not solve the condensation problem, his steel shelter was just a different kind of death trap. He tackled moisture first. He went to a local hardware store and spent exactly $18 on a 50-foot roll of 6mm plastic sheeting. The heavy-duty material usually laid under concrete slabs. He lined the entire interior arch with it, creating a seamless vapor barrier. That $18 plastic stopped his body heat from reaching the frozen steel. But stopping the moisture was only half the battle. He needed an actual thermal barrier, and spray foam insulation cost thousands of dollars. So, Arthur drove his truck to active commercial construction sites on the edge of Missoula after the crews had left for the day. Commercial builders throw away thousands of dollars in rigid foam board cutoffs because partial sheets have no resale value. Over 3 nights, Arthur pulled enough discarded 2-inch rigid foam from construction dumpsters to line the entire interior of his Quonset hut. He cut the salvage foam panels to fit the curve of the arches, sealing every gap with half-used cans of expanding foam he found in the same dumpsters. The R value of that 2-inch foam is roughly R10, enough to radically slow heat transfer. To lock it all in place and protect the fragile foam, he covered the interior with broken-down pallet wood, creating a solid, dry inner wall. He had built a heat trap out of industrial garbage, and the physics of a heavily insulated microspace are incredibly forgiving. A resting human body generates roughly 100 watts of heat, about the same as an old incandescent light bulb. Throw in the body heat of a large dog, and you have a continuous 150-watt internal heat source. Inside a sealed, insulated 100 square foot space, that combined body heat can push the interior temperature 30 to 40 degrees higher than the freezing air outside. At 20 degrees below zero, Arthur was surviving off his own pulse. For the first time in 14 months, he slept through the night in total warmth. He was finally safe in winter, but he was not safe in the county. On a Tuesday morning in late January, Arthur woke up to a bright orange piece of paper taped to the outside of a steel door. It was a formal notice of violation issued by the County Code Enforcement Division. The citation referenced a direct violation of Title 17 residential zoning ordinances. It explicitly labeled his insulated Quonset hut an unpermitted accessory structure and declared it a severe safety hazard because it lacked central heating and municipal permits. A severe safety hazard. That was the exact official language the local government chose to describe a dry, heavily insulated, 100 square foot room that had just kept a 62-year-old man from freezing to death on the pavement during a historic minus 20-degree blizzard. The printed notice demanded the immediate demolition of the steel structure within 14 days. Failure to comply would trigger an automated $500 daily fine that some would ruin him in a matter of hours. When questioned about the enforcement policy, a spokesperson for the local zoning board stated that individuals living in unauthorized off-grid structures will be much safer and better served utilizing the city's official emergency warming centers. The exact same warming centers that demanded Arthur abandon his dog to enter. The exact same centers that locked their doors at 6 o'clock in the morning and pushed vulnerable older men back into the freezing wind. The city was not offering Arthur a safer housing solution. They were offering him an impossible choice. He could abandon his only living companion, or he could be fined into permanent, inescapable criminal debt. But Arthur did not have to fight the local bureaucracy alone. The aging rancher who owned the property stepped in to run interference. He understood the county's agricultural exemptions perfectly. He drove down to the municipal planning office and filed paperwork reclassifying the small Quonset hut as an agricultural feed she had meant for protecting winter livestock supplies. Because the corrugated steel arch sat on a temporary cinder block foundation and lacked any permanent connection to municipal plumbing or the local power grid, it technically bypassed strict residential permit thresholds under rural zoning laws. The public reaction was quiet, but fiercely protective. Blue-collar taxpayers were infuriated by the sheer absurdity of the situation. They saw a mechanic who had asked the government for absolutely nothing, who had spent his own $280 to build a brilliant thermal survival trap out of garbage, being hunted by the state. He was being penalized by a bloated bureaucracy that spent millions of taxpayer dollars every year completely failing to achieve what it had just done. The county quietly backed down. Arthur got to keep his warm, dry sanctuary without paying a single dollar in fines. But as the local zoning dispute faded, a much larger reality started to come into strict focus. Arthur was not a solitary outlier fighting the cold. Arthur's survival against both the winter and the county zoning board felt like a solitary victory. But when a survival solution is this cheap and effective, the blueprint does not stay hidden. While Arthur was securing his home in Missoula, the exact same quiet rebellion was taking shape 700 miles east in Burleigh County, North Dakota. A 68-year-old disabled veteran named Thomas had constructed an almost identical thermal survival pod. He did not use a Quonset hut. He used a heavy-duty ice fishing tent wrapped in radiant thermal blankets and lined with salvaged rigid foam board. A third man in rural Wyoming built his shelter from the insulated panels of a discarded commercial walk-in freezer. The materials differed, but the underlying thermal engineering was exactly the same. And none of these men had ever met. They did not need to. The knowledge was already moving quietly across the freezing northern states, passing through the invisible channels of the rural poor. This underground architectural network does not have a website or a board of directors. It operates through sketches drawn on diner napkins over black coffee. It spreads through brief, quiet conversations in the back of food bank lines in Fargo, and through wiring diagrams pulled up on public library computers in Billings. Social workers in South Dakota recently reported discovering at least 45 undocumented micro-shelters hidden in rural woodlands over a single winter. The men building them are former mechanics, retired carpenters, and combat veterans. Men who understand how to manipulate our values, vapor barriers, and structural framing. Men who realize the government was not coming to save them, and the data proves their method works. According to independent outreach tracking across the Dakotas, the winter survival and retention rate for men in these self-built thermal pods hovers near 94%. Compare that to the multi-million-dollar state-funded transitional housing programs in those same regions. Records show that in official congregate systems, up to 35% of individuals abandon facilities and return to the streets within the first 3 months. The government spends millions of taxpayer dollars to achieve a 65% success rate. A disabled veteran spends $300 on scrap foam and an ice tent and achieves a 94% survival rate. This invisible tide of blue-collar self-reliance is quietly bypassing a broken municipal system. But surviving the initial drop below zero is only the first part of the equation, because living entirely off the grid in the dead of winter is not a victory lap. It is a grueling daily physical chore. Waking up at 5 a.m. inside an insulated steel box when it is 10 degrees below zero outside is a brutal physical shock. The air near the floor settles into a heavy, bone-deep chill that aches in your joints. The very first thing Arthur does every morning is not stretch or check a phone. He unzips his heavy bag, shivering in the dark, and checks his breath. If he can see it pluming in the air, the thermal pocket is failing. If he can't, he has survived another night. Living off the grid in the snow strips away every illusion of comfort. Water is an agonizing daily chore. Arthur and his dog survive on roughly 3 gallons a week for drinking, cooking, and basic hygiene. During heavy freezes, his fingers go numb hauling plastic jugs from town at 25 cents a gallon. When the rural roads are too iced over to drive, he kneels in the biting wind to scoop clean snow into an aluminum pot, melting it slowly over a small propane camp stove. A 16-ounce propane canister costs $4 and yields 2 hours of burn time. He calculates every minute that flame is active, listening to the agonizingly slow drip of melting ice. The bathroom question stops most people from ever attempting a build like this. In freezing temperatures, traditional plumbing is a liability that bursts and destroys structures. Arthur uses a dry composting toilet built from a 5-gallon bucket, a standard toilet seat, and a bag of pine shavings from the local feed store. It costs $6 a month to maintain. When the bucket is full, the sub-zero temperatures outside naturally halt decomposition, effectively freeze drying the waste until the spring thaw. The mental toll of this constant, freezing vigilance is exhausting. You're always watching thermometer, checking the plastic vapor barrier for leaks, rationing propane, and battling the creeping cold. Make no mistake about this lifestyle. This is not a glamorous tiny home. It is a harsh, stubborn, physically punishing existence defined by manual labor. But when the winter wind slams against the corrugated steel at 3 in the morning, the structure does not shake. The walls do not move. Arthur sleeps inside a dry sleeping bag behind a heavy door that locks from the inside. And that unglamorous reality beats dying in the front seat of a pickup truck every single time. That was 3 winters ago. The corrugated steel arch is still standing behind that tree line in Missoula County. Arthur is 65 years old now. Because he finally had a secure place to sleep where his dog was safe, his physical health stopped deteriorating. Because he could sleep through the night without idling a truck engine in terror, his joint inflammation subsided. He is working again. He takes part-time small engine repair jobs in surrounding ranches, fixing generators and tractors for cash. He is alive, stable, and completely independent of the city system. The modern housing system operates on a single, uncompromising assumption. It says that money is the only legitimate pathway to a home. Arthur rejected that assumption. He proved that what you actually need is a piece of overlooked ground, materials that commercial builders consider garbage, and enough sheer stubbornness to figure out how things go together. The money is what the system tells you is necessary. The ground and the stubbornness are what actually build the walls. For $280 in surplus steel, $18 in plastic sheeting, and a few weeks of agonizing labor, he built a thermal sanctuary. That $298 investment has successfully outlasted 3 brutal Rocky Mountain winters. It outperformed emergency shelters that cost millions of dollars to operate. He completely beat the math. There is no romance in this kind of poverty, but there's an undeniable ironclad dignity in this kind of survival. Look at watermark_IMG_1350067605552240765. JPG, to see what that dignity looks like. It is not a sprawling off-grid compound. It is just an older man in a heavy brown work coat and insulated gloves, standing in the deep snow outside a dented, rusted metal hut. You can see his breath pluming in the freezing morning air. He is cold in that photograph, but behind him is a solid door, and behind that door is a warm, dry room that belongs entirely to him. When the seasons change in that steel arch-trapped summer heat, air circulation becomes just as critical as insulation. Need a silent but powerful fan? Check out this bladeless fan in the description below. Perfect for a quiet night's sleep. If resourcefulness like this matters to you, subscribing helps more people find this channel. Click the video on screen right now for a completely different off-grid survival build, and keep going.